negative thinking in a relationship. So when things happen, what do you do? The very first thing that happens when something happens is you think about it,
Yes.
right? And so if something has happened and you're hurt by it, or you were confused, or you weren't expecting it, a lot of times the thinking around it can be stinking thinking. Things like, they don't love me, they don't like me, they don't want me, they don't care about me. I mean, right?
Yes.
Those kinds of things that come in. And if you don't address that thinking right away, it will take root in your spirit, and it will change the way that you react and respond to your partner, your spouse, or whatever, even, and your children even. And so it's very, very important to follow a biblical concept and verse that says, take your thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. And in order to do that, you have to look at the thought and you have to decide what you want to do with it. And this is something that people don't do. I mean, very few people I know really understand how to examine their thinking. Okay? And it's one of the things that God talks about a lot in the Word. He says, as a man thinketh, so he is. Take your thoughts captive. Think on things that are true and noble and righteous. It's just so many things. And so God says we need to look at what we think about rather than worry about our feelings, because it is the thought that creates the feeling.
Wow.
And so many of us want to get into our feelings, and we're all about how we feel, and I'm all with you on that, okay? But if you're sitting in negative feelings or hurtful feelings, every time I'm going to have to ask you, what are you thinking?
Yes.
Because a lot of times that thinking goes back to something that may be a lie. And if you're sitting there thinking they don't love me anymore, and that is absolutely not true, and you love that person, you start putting that thought on them, right? It's going to change the way you act, don't you think?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's birthed out of misunderstandings as well, where maybe he or she used to do something that you really enjoyed that made you feel special and good inside, and things change. All of a sudden he doesn't do that anymore, she doesn't do that anymore, and when you're trying to prompt the other person to do that act or that service, they miss the cue.
They miss it.
Yeah, it's a misunderstanding, and then you interpret that as,
they don't love me anymore, right?
I'm being dismissed, or their affection for me has changed, and you're trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, I mean, my husband was really good about buying me flowers, before he was my husband, okay? So when we were dating, he'd buy me flowers, give me cards, and then once we got married, it kind of tapered off a little bit, and so I simply went to him and I said, hey, I love it when I get these, so would you be willing just a couple times a month to bring me flowers or a card? I just really like that. And he was like, sure. Okay? But before having that conversation, the thinking that I was dealing with was, he doesn't care about me anymore. He doesn't think about me anymore. You see?
Yeah.
And boy, if I hadn't addressed that and used some of the tools that we're going to share with you, which is taking that thought captive by writing it down and looking at it and deciding if it was true or not true or questionable, okay, then I wouldn't be sitting here today, I don't think. Because it's those little thoughts that line up and then create this huge issue eventually when it is not addressed. And a lot of times it's a big ball of your internal lies that you're believing, that you've allowed to influence you, And so you have to start taking apart one by one and addressing them.
Yeah, but let me tell you a story about this newlywed couple. It's pretty funny. Hopefully it's funny. But so this couple, they got married. The wife was an excellent cook, and the husband enjoyed eating her food. He didn't tell her, only when she asked. She would ask and say, oh yeah, I really like the food. And so, but he would always say that. So she really wanted to dig a little deeper and really find out, if he really loved the food.
Does he really like the food?
So she would just observe him, and so he would get seconds every so often, and the foods that he would eat that he would go back and get seconds for, a second plate, then she decided, okay, that's how I determine that she really likes it, or he really likes the food. So, one day she asked him, hey, do you like this meal? And he's like, oh yeah, I love it, it's great. And he ate one plate, and then he got up and he left, and she was furious. And he had no idea. He didn't understand what happened. He was like, I ate the food. It was good. I told you I ate it, and I left, and now you're questioning me if I like the food, and you're upset. And so it just kind of went over his head. And so they eventually had the conversation, like, hey, you know, I realize that when you get seconds, that lets me know that you really like it, because you always say you like the food, but I don't really know. So when you say you like it and then you eat one plate and then you leave, then that lets me know that you really didn't like it, because you wouldn't communicate to me that you didn't like my food. And so it turned this huge ordeal, and once they had the conversation, they realized like how small and minor it was.
Right.
And if he didn't like something, he just said, hey, you know, it's not my favorite dish.
Right.
And but if he liked something, he went more over and above to kind of explain, like, hey, you know, I really liked it, and this is why. You know, and so she felt confident she could understand.
Right. But you see where the stinking thinking started with her.
Yes.
Because she had developed a strategy to figure this out without talking to you.
Wow.
And that's where part of that problem comes from. So in her mind, she had this strategy like, I'm going to wait and watch and figure this out. And I'm telling you, that's too much work.
Yes.
Like, don't do that. Talk. You know, a simple, hey, when I ask you if you like your food and you like it, say yes. But if you really like it, tell me. You know, I mean, that's simple, okay? And so that's a great example of how something really simple can manifest and roll around in your head for a while, you know. And I don't know how long it took her to have the conversation, but I mean, she could have struggled with that thinking for months,
Yes.
you know, or even years. And that, by the way, takes energy. I just want you to know. By the way, when you're thinking about stuff like that and you have stinking thinking going on, it's taking your energy away. And so if you're feeling really tired in your relationship, my question would be, you know, what kind of stinking thinking do you have going on that's draining you and really, you know, taking that energy away from you that you could be giving to enhance the relationship rather than figure out what's wrong.
Because when we have that negative thinking, we tend to like rehearse it in our minds. Even when it's not occurring, we think about it, we dwell on it, and so our reaction is amplified, you know, to the stimulus, which is, you know, him eating, and it becomes this big thing that it doesn't have to be, you know.
Yeah, and the person eating has no idea. Like, they're sitting there and they're totally having no idea. They're just
And so when it comes to a head and there's a discussion and you like address him like upset, and he's just kind of like, I don't know what happened. Where did this person come from that's angry with me? She's a great cook. I love her. I don't know. And so, but you know, if you don't speak up and, you know, choose to communicate, you know, often you find that people will make decisions about you without you. And so even though she had this thinking, but he also could have, you know, stepped up and just kind of talked more, communicated more. Because that's what happens a lot of times when we don't communicate. We choose not to communicate, keep everything to ourselves. It leaves the other person out. And so if you're the guy in a situation like, hey, I didn't do anything wrong, like, oh well, there's still a percentage of blame on you. I would assign to you there, but you have to be wise.
You know, that's a good point. Not doing something is not always the right choice.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of people think, well, I didn't do anything. You know, well, sometimes not doing something and inaction or not communicating actually isn't okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to get you out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you could have done this.
Exactly.
You could have done this. And many times, as we said, you know, once you get further into a relationship, you'll see some of the things earlier might taper off. And that's the time that you need to be having those conversations, setting those boundaries, okay?
Yes.
So communication and boundaries, which are two courses that we offer that are foundational for relationships. I have found seriously in my practice and in business that most people really don't know how to communicate. They don't, and therefore they don't communicate. So it isn't that they don't want to. It isn't that they wouldn't. It's that they don't know how. Like, where do you learn communication? Seriously. If you're not in a corporation that's really teaching it, I don't know where anybody learns it unless they've been around me for a while or, you know, seriously involved in 180 or something, because you just don't get it. And so we're here to just help you. So if you're frustrated and you're sitting there and these thoughts are going through your mind and they're just beating you up really with your thinking, the first thing I would tell you is you need to write them all down and decide, are they really true, not true, or questionable? That's number one. You need to examine your thinking and really get a handle on it. And number two, you need to have courage enough to begin the process of learning how to communicate and
Yes.
communicating with your significant other, spouse, whatever. And
Important.
so that you can move forward through these things and they don't become, the foxes that spoil the vine, really.
Good deal. So make sure that you stay connected with us.
Yes.
We have so much great content and value for you. And just like Pastor Julie said, we have a great course, video course of communication, same thing with boundaries. And if you're watching this video and you've watched it to the end, you see value in what we're saying, and you realize that there's a relationship problem that does exist in your relationship. And if so, make sure that you invest in yourself and your relationship and give it the proper chance
Yes.
to be successful, to be healthy, and take one of our courses, partner with us in your journey into your marriage, your relationship with your significant other. And one thing I want to leave you with to really consider, it's really the foundation of everything we talk about is temperament. And
So it is.
and temperament is not only is it the foundation, but it helps you to understand your thinking and how you process thoughts, not only with your significant other, but also people you work with.
Right.
Close relationships, surface relationships,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and then how we deal with control. But if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if, temperament is really the handprint of God on your life. It's who He created you to be. And so if you don't really understand that, and depending on your life experience and circumstances, there's a lot of learned behavior we can pick up that kind of cover up who we really are. And so it is important for you to understand who you really are, to not let others define that or situations define that. And temperament is amazing. It really is. I have worked with temperament for many, many years, and when people come in my office and learn about their temperaments, they're usually very shocked. They usually look at me and go, how did you get that out of that? And it's pretty scientific how they do it, but it's very short. Temperament's 54 questions basically, and what we get back from that is amazing information. And so we really encourage you to invest in yourself, invest in temperament for yourself, and learn the basics. And the thing is that you don't want to bail on a good relationship just because you have negative thinking around it or stinking thinking around it.
I didn't want to meet the right person at the wrong time
wrong
and not be prepared to be in a healthy relationship. So going through the temperament training with Pastor Julie really helped me out and encouraged me. I went back to school, got my master's, got my doctorate. I'm so excited and passionate about relationships now. And it's just really key because it's so helpful. Even this last month, I went back and looked over the tests and some of the information to make sure I'm continuously doing those things that I need to do to make my relationship stay successful and stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my temperament for a little over 12 years. I've known it for over 12 years, and I still refer to it probably every couple months. And I teach it all the time. But I mean, I'll look at mine because I'll be looking at it and go, oh, that's right, or what. I mean, I forgot about that. I forgot that I have that going on, And so it's just so helpful ongoing, I think many people have tools where they get a tool, they learn something, and they kind of move on. And the thing about temperament is you always have it. And with real relationship goals, you have a video that you can watch all the time on it. I mean, you have access to that. So that's really enrichment, I think, because even my clients don't have that yet. So, I mean, they'll be getting it.
Good deal. So invest in yourself. Go to the box below once again, get the free videos, of course, but also invest in yourself, get temperament training. We encourage it. It's the foundation of what we do here. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't already subscribed to our video, make sure that you like us on Facebook. All the cool social media platforms are on there. Check us out. And we will see you on the next one. Now remember, this is part 2 of a three-part series. Mm-hmm. So we talked about Everybody Lies. If you haven't seen that, make sure you go to that. Part 2 today, we talked about stinking thinking. And 3, which is the most anticipated video right now on YouTube anywhere in the world today. But it's really anticipated. What happened?
What happened?
What happened? Yeah, because I mean, you're in a relationship, you start everything's rosy and peaches and things are going perfectly well, and then you wake up one day and things are different.
Yeah.
And you don't know why.
What happened?
What happened? So we'll talk about that. So stay tuned, check out our next video, what happened, and we'll see you then.
See you then.